Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. You're gonna love our episode today. We've got David Nathan coming on. He is just an awesome guy. A lot of experience in the entertainment and music industry. Also lost his son. His son was 19 when he died from an accidental fentanyl overdose. And David's very candid in talking about that and what he's done to honor his son's memory post loss. And just an all around great guy. And I'm really excited to have him on the podcast. Without any further ado, let's just bring David on right now. So, David, thank you so much for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. Really excited to have you on the program.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about Salty Ginger and you as a person and as a host, so I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, look, we had a great conversation probably about a month ago now, and yeah, just we're fortunate. You join a long list of really high quality individuals that we attract to the podcast, and what works really well is just to have our guests give kind of an overview of their life. So kind of start, leaving high school and how you made your way out into the adult world and to where you're at now, broad strokes. And then we go back and dig into stuff kind of one by one after you kind of lay that out. So with that, the floor is yours. Let's hear it.
Yeah, thanks again. So, graduated from a little private school in West Hartford, Connecticut, which is where I grew up. Played lacrosse, played hockey, went to Northeastern University in Boston, where I went to play hockey and then ended up not playing, and ended up pledging a fraternity instead, which ultimately was probably one of the best decisions I ever made in my life because I knew I wasn't going pro, so it was fine. But um, went to school in Northeastern, started working in the music industry. I was a huge music head, was a hip hop kid, pop kid, rock person. I loved it all. Um, and I started working for the clubs in Boston, started working for a record company, started working for a promotion guy, ended up starting a promotion company with two of my fraternity brothers, which, if anybody that's paying attention is familiar with Lansdowne Street, which is right behind Fenway Park in Boston, which is where all the restaurants and clubs are. I pretty much ran that street for 3 years of my life. We're very well connected, met a lot of people. One of the things you'll probably dig in a little bit with me is the ability to network. And I was just a huge networker, love people, love talking, as you'll see today, I'm sure. And just kind of really found my way. I didn't want to be a lawyer, didn't want to be a doctor, didn't want to be, anything other than something in the entertainment business. And so I kind of found my way. Like I said, met a ton of people, ran, clubs, started at a record company, graduated, stayed in Boston for a year, got a job working for a record company, or sorry, a radio station, moved to New York, lived on a friend's couch for probably about 3 months. Finally got a job with my friend who had just moved from Boston to New York as a promotion guy at Columbia Records. He got me a job as an assistant. I was there for 2 years. One day short of 2 years because I remember my boss told me that if I was an assistant for more than 2 years, I sucked. So I was like, okay, I got to get out of here. So I got out of there and went to Island Records for about 366 days. My boss ripped up my bonus check in front of me because I had quit and was going to a little startup record company called Universal Music Group or Universal Records, which ultimately, if you fast forward to now, is called Republic Records. So I was a seventh employee at Republic Records, lasted 21 years there. Left there in the end of 17, started a management company, was consulting for BMG for a year, as head of promotion there. Ran a management consulting business. If you really want to get into it, and I could talk about that more, in 2020, my 19-year-old son passed away from a fentanyl poisoning, accidental fentanyl poisoning, which I then took over his company, which was called Happy Jack, still is today, all about mental health and creating a community for the misunderstood. So I still run that business today, which is that, if you can see. And
Mm.
so I do that. And then I started Happy Jack Entertainment, which was or is a company that the idea behind it is to kind of rival Barstool on the mental wellness side of things. And the goal is to, start a record company, also a mental health record company, and do a bunch of other stuff in that respect also. So currently I consult a bunch of artists. I manage a couple of artists, and I do, a bunch of different things kind of on the side and got my hands in a bunch of stuff, but all to keep myself busy. Yet to find the money. So I gotta find the money, but it's all good because I'm in a good place. So that's kind of the very quick overview of everything.
No, I love that. And I don't want it to go without saying really sorry about the loss of your son, obviously.
Yeah, thanks.
I want to spend the appropriate amount of time and give that the respect it deserves. So I want to save that to later in our
Of course.
conversation. Um, but let's go back. One of the things we notice, so like our podcast is about living a purposeful life, and you get to choose what that is. I love that you like eschewed not in a negative way. Like I didn't hear you talk down about it at all, but you knew a path like a lawyer or a doctor or a white collar gig was not your gig,
Yeah.
and you pursued that, and I love that. And that's one of the things we hear from our guests over and over and over again is some people will go down that road or a road and go, hey, this is not my road. Like this is not what I want. I want to talk a little about your decision to not play hockey at Northeastern, because I remember in our conversation, I went through college on a baseball scholarship,
Yeah.
and to get to a Division I school to play sports, you typically like there's every once in a while there's not like Antonio Gates played basketball and then his junior year he took up football and he was just a
Right.
freak and wound up
Right.
making the NFL. But generally, like you spend years of your life to put yourself in those positions. And not only did you put yourself in that position, you got there. And
Yeah.
then you said, hey, not my thing. Talk a little bit about that choice because that
Well,
takes some balls.
yeah, well, just to clarify, I did not get recruited to Northeastern. I talked to the coach a lot, and basically what it came down to was I'm not going to get a scholarship. They were number 5 in the country, Division I, as you said, at the time. But what I did get was invited to go and to play, and ended up, doing that, playing JV for a little bit, 3 games. It was the worst. We got crushed in 3 games, and I was like on the third line, and I was like, "This is I don't need to do this anymore." Like I said earlier, I'm not. I know I wasn't going to do this as a profession, so for me, I kind of decided right then and there to just kind of focus on something else. And but yes, I mean, I played hockey since I was 5 years old, and obviously I played baseball and I played soccer and I played all these other sports, but baseball was really a sport that sorry, hockey was really a sport that I loved. And then, as I got older, I got into lacrosse, which is same type of impact sport. There's really 3 of them. It's football, lacrosse, and hockey, which are those, impact sports. And I just loved it. I was aggressive. I was small but fast, and I was a little pesty. Which is when I always watch like the Rangers, and because I'm a huge Ranger fan, but when you watch hockey today, it's always the little guys. They get in there, they scrum, and then they get out, and then the big guys come in and start fighting. And occasionally the little guy will get in there, but for the most part, they cause the drama and then they get out, and that's ultimately where I was. But it served me well because and I try it, as a coach, and I coach lacrosse now, and I do a lot of different things. I try and explain that it's not really about size; it's about skill, it's about the mind and the passion and understanding of the sport in which you can always succeed. And and the kids that listen to it, my stepson is a little kid, and he's 14, he's going to high school, and he's a little guy. But he plays lacrosse, and he's one of the smallest guys on the team, and but he gets in there, and like you can't teach that, and all you can do is encourage it. But so I just to going back to it, I always look at sports as a way to help um, educate people, as a way to discipline people, as a way to really get people prepared, for the next level of their life. And you often see that. I actually was having this conversation the other day about someone who's an HR guy, and the answer to me, the question was, who do you always like to hire? Like if you're like looking at something and you have 4 different columns of people, and he goes, one of the things I will always look for is if they played sports in college. And because it just, and obviously Division I sport, it's a completely different mindset. But just sports in general, they teach you the competitiveness, how to play, how to lose, how to win, how to celebrate, how to be a team player, how to do all these things that encompass true life, and so I feel like I've learned a lot about that, and it really shaped the way I looked at life and the way I attacked things in my career, as I grew and expanded.
Yeah, love that. Love that. And to me, you touched on the key points that I took away from my experience as well. And I was different than you in that I was absolutely trying to become a professional baseball player. So from the
Oh,
time I
don't
was,
think I didn't want to become one. I did want to. That was a goal, but I just knew it wasn't going to happen. So I just, but I really did. That ultimately was, that was my ultimate goal when I was young, was I wanted to play hockey. So,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. But, I was talking to the Reds, the Cubs, and the Padres about a free agent deal, and I met my wife. And hockey is very similar to baseball, and there are minor leagues in hockey. So, in football or basketball, typically, if you get drafted, you go right to the big team. And in hockey and baseball, that's not at all how it works. I mean, if you're whoever, insert superstar here. Sidney Crosby went to the Penguins. Alexander Ovechkin went to the Capitals. However, that third line winger or the fifth guy out of the bullpen for the Phillies, like you
yeah,
toil in the minor leagues for no fucking money for a long time.
yeah.
And that's the path I would have had to follow if I was going to do it. Because I was not,
There's actually a kid in our town who went where I live, grew up with my son, played football with him, played all the sports with him. He started to excel at baseball,
yeah.
and he was an incredible pitcher. Went to college to play. I think at Rutgers, but I'm not sure. Maybe somewhere down there. Anyway, he got drafted by the Reds, and he's going to be 25, or he is 25. I see his dad all the time in town, and I'm like, "Where is he?" And he's like, "Still in the minors." But he may get called up. And I actually know his agent because his agent lives in town. But and every time I see him, I ask how he's doing, and you're 100% right. People could spend their entire lives get drafted and then spend their entire lives in the minor leagues, and it's I guess I don't know, like, where do you go from there? Like, how do you, everybody's different. Somebody says, I'm almost there, I made it to the show, whatever. And then the other people are like, I'm gonna go do something different. I can't waste my life doing this and broken down buses and Super 8 hotels. I get it. I get it. I get it. I saw it. So, you know,
Oh my gosh, totally. And look, I loved every single minute of it. If I hadn't met my wife and didn't know what a good thing I had there, you would have had to drag me out of the clubhouse kicking and screaming. I never would have left. I loved every minute of it. But it taught me all the things you talked about. Like I'm a better husband, I'm a better father, I'm a better leader, I'm a better person in business because I participated in team athletics. And I actually asked that question in interviews. Did you participate in team athletics as a kid? And I give preference to people who did 100% because they learned all the lessons you just talked about.
yeah, it really is like, it just, I could talk about it for hours. It truly is. And it's just an important thing. I think sports are just a really important piece of growth in
Yeah,
life as you grow up.
yeah, for sure. So you decide to walk and then you join a fraternity and you immediately start networking. You talked about your ability to network. Talk a little about, you said that was one of the best experiences of your life. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I had a friend that was in a fraternity that I grew up with. He was a year older than me, and so one of the reasons I went to Northeastern and ended up pledging that fraternity was because of him, obviously. But um, I just I love the camaraderie. I love the brotherhood component. I love the protection component because let's be honest, I was a little bit of a wise ass when I was a freshman in college. Again, my roommate was 6'6", so he was a big boy, and so like again, like in hockey, I would be jumping over the top at a fraternity, probably like, "Ah, fuck you," and then I throw a haymaker over the top and then run. And occasionally I got caught and was on the bottom of the pile, but it just it's like sports again. It's the same thing. It's like being part of a group of people that all come from different places but share the same goal or meaning in life at that point, which is fraternity, brotherhood, family. That's really important. And when you're a freshman in college, especially at a school in the city or anywhere, it's important to be able to help you kind of navigate through it and find your friends. You know, my daughter did it. My son did it. My wife did it. My friends, obviously, where I live today is, I live in New Jersey, and I have, I think there's six or seven of us that all still that live right here,
Mm.
which is nice. So we see each other, and the rest live in Long Island in the city. So, for the most part, but um, yeah, the network thing, I just, again, like you either have like this gift of gab or you don't. And like, where you can walk into a room, you can pick out anybody and jump into a conversation. And that's what I am able to do. And, I pride myself on being genuinely interested when I'm actually having a conversation and listening. Maybe a little less now than I did when I was younger, but I'm also asking different questions and paying attention to other things now as I've gotten older, right? Um, but I just started networking. I loved the red carpet factor, right? I was always a big fan of being in the limelight, but then kind of being on the backside of it and helping other people get there, which if you really kind of peel back the layers of my career, that's essentially what I did my entire career. Um, I never got starstruck. I got starstruck with athletes, which, maybe you understand, and like when I first ever met Wayne Gretzky, I was just like, holy shit, this is, or Mark Messier. Like these are guys that I grew up with. Andre Agassi. I was like this, like certain people that I grew up following and once I met at some point, it was very cool. I mean, I think to this day, the only person that I've ever like gotten the only two people that I've ever really gotten starstruck over meeting and like was like sweating and was Bono, and Madonna. Those two, that's it. Everybody else, to me was like, and I worked with Billy Joel, I worked with Elton John, I worked with Prince, I worked with Olivia Newton-John, I worked with big Donna Summer and big artists that I grew up paying attention to. Um, and it just never, I just, for whatever reason, I was a huge U2 fan. So that was Bono. And Madonna was a big part of my young adult life, like my getting into the teens. And but just going back to the network thing, I just feel like it's, you can do it one of two ways, right? You can either walk into a room and kind of be a wallflower, and just kind of observe, which sometimes I do. But for the most part, there isn't a room that I haven't been able to talk in, I don't get nervous around people, and I don't care how much money you have or, who you're married to or what movies you've been in. Like they're people, and yes, some of them are role models and some of them, are built to be that way. But again, they're just people. They're just talented in certain things. And, you have the ability to communicate. That's going to help you along the way.
Yeah, for sure. And look, if you want to get anywhere in life, you're not going to do it by yourself. Like it's just that simple. So the
Yeah.
ability to speak to people in a network is terribly important. I actually think it's probably the single best skill that I have is the ability to communicate to people and with people regardless of where they're standing in life is. So I'm just as well received on a receiving dock at a warehouse as I am in a boardroom, and I spend time in both of those places.
Yeah.
And you have to understand how to communicate with people depending on where you are, and they're not you're not going to be able to impact them, and you're not going to be able to provide leadership if they don't trust you and they can't connect with you. And like you've built your career on exactly exactly what I just talked about. So I know you know exactly what I am talking about. So let's talk a little bit about that. So you leave college, you want to be in the entertainment business. How'd you get started in that?
Um, well, when I was 18, 19, 18, probably 18. Uh, again, I was in college and I had a friend of mine, my uncle had a very good friend whose daughter worked at a radio station in Hartford, Connecticut, where I grew up. And I grew up, every day listening to that radio station my entire life, up until that point. And so when I came back, I think like Thanksgiving, a freshman year, I had a meeting with her, and she's like, "Look, we need people to come in the spring. Do you want to come? Do you want to come here?" And so the radio station was 96.5 TICFM, and they had an AM station called, it was I think it was 1080 TICFM. It was the AM station, which, did all it was the AM station back in the day, right? It did all the school
Sure.
closings, weather reports, all the traffic and kind of all that crap. But I got in too late, so they hired me as they brought me in as an intern in the spring at the AM radio station, and I had like whatever it was, 50 hours or 60 hours, 100 hours, whatever the number was that I had to do. And long story short is I ended up that summer, I think I did 10 hours on the AM side because I just found my way. I met the right people. I talked to the people. I went to the events on the FM side. And I remember they had a summer kickoff party at the beach in Connecticut with an artist, if you ever remember, I don't even know, but an artist named Stevie B, right?
Oh yeah, I
He was
remember Stevie B.
Okay. So he was there doing the show, and I met him that day, and I just for some reason we hit it off, and my boss saw it and was like, you know, do you really want to be on the AM side? And I'm like, fuck no, I don't want to do this. Like, but you gotta, I had to get in somehow, right? So I ended up doing, just for argument's sake, I had 100 hours. I ended up doing 90 at the top at the pop station, and I left the AM station. And then I met a lot of record people, throughout, because this was a big radio station back then. So all the record people, the promotion people used to come in, and I used to meet them. So when I went back to school after the summer, I interviewed with a couple of people to do an internship. Now, remember, Northeastern, it still is today, but it was, it's a co-op school. So back in the day, you had to do, it was a 5-year school. So you had to go first year, freshman year, you went to school. Then you came second year, sophomore year, you did 6 months on, 6 months off, right? To start working. Then you did the same thing. So junior year, and then, junior year, then senior year, but it was a 5-year school because you ended up working for a year, right?
Yeah.
Over that time. And so I got three interviews when I went back to school, one at Chrysalis Records, one at Columbia Records, and one at Epic Records. And for whatever reason, I ended up taking the Chrysalis one. But it was funny because the way the guy interviewed me, he picked me up in his car. He drove me to the airport in Boston, Logan Airport, and he had to go to the FedEx office there and pick up a bunch of stuff. And he put music on in a car and a cassette player. Like, I remember this. And, at the end of it, he's like, "Well, what did you think of that song?" And I was like, "Man, it was a great record." And it was the first song, it was Extreme, if you remember More Than Words. The song
Oh
hadn't
yeah,
come.
I remember it. Yep.
Yeah, or it either hadn't come out yet, or it was just coming out yet. It was just coming out. I can't remember that part, but the first in-store. So I ended up working for him, and the first in-store, if you remember those, right? Where they used to go to the record stores and they'd play, and people would line up and get a wristband and the whole thing. And they did an in-store at Strawberries, if you remember Strawberries, down in the downtown Boston. And that's where they were from Boston. So it was like very cool thing to experience. And then I just, from there on, that was it. Like, I fell in love with promotion and marketing and kind of doing, all that stuff in that world. And then, so the rest kind of just started to roll off of that. But that's how it really started. I mean, just a friend of a friend, a friend of my family knew somebody, connected me in, and I ended up just kind of like snaking through that radio station from the AM to the FM side, came back to school sophomore year, and ended up doing, internships. And funny enough is I actually graduated Northeastern in 4 years because the communications school at the time, it didn't require you to do an intern to do your work study. So
Mm.
I did my internships as I was going to school. So I ended up graduating in 4 years as opposed to 5, which was cool because then I stayed in Boston for an extra year, messed around. So it was fun.
Yeah, for sure. So talk a little bit about your time at Columbia. I think that's where you said you were there for exactly or just a day under 2 years, and your
I
boss
think it
tore
was
up
like,
your bonus
yeah.
check.
No, that was at Island. But so when I graduated, I moved to Long Island. I lived on my friend's couch. I got a job at a company called DJ Times Magazine, which I don't even know if it still exists, but I got a job in Woodmere, New York, and I was selling advertising space or booth space at at festivals. And it sucked. It was the worst. But I got in there. I don't even think I sold anything, to be honest with you. But I think I did sell one thing. Uh, but all in, I was constantly out in the city. I was constantly talking to people. And like I said, my very good friend had gotten promoted from New York, from Boston to New York. He was the regional rep in Boston. Then he got promoted to national top 40 promotion in New York. And I called him and I was like, dude, anything you need, like I'll come in every day, like I don't care. And he called me and he was like, I remember he called me and he goes, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "I'm going to work." And he said, "Call in sick. I got you an interview with the head of promotion, the senior vice president of promotion at Columbia, but you got to come in tomorrow."
Mm.
I was like, no problem. Of course, that was like Columbia Records. Hello, the number one record label in the business. And so I went in and I interviewed. It took me longer to get in to the city than it did to get into the building, interview, get out of the building, and follow up essentially. And so the next day, I was a big Grateful Dead fan. I'll never forget this because the next day, on my friend's house, I got home from work. I opened the mail, and this was when you used to get your mail order Grateful Dead tickets, right?
Oh yeah.
I got mail order tickets for Giant Stadium. And then my friend called me and he's like, "Okay, so do you want to work at Columbia Records?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Quit your other job. You got the job." And so it's like I got the tickets and I got the job that day. Um, and so I quit and I started on like the following Monday. And I was essentially like a per diem. So I was working for every department on the floor, right? So I was working for, but I was really a pop guy and I kind of navigated towards that. And then the senior VP of pop promotions assistant quit. Um, and they started interviewing. And I was like, I was friends with the guy who was interviewing, and I'm like, his name was Jerry Blair. He just like passed away a year and a half ago. He was crazy. But I went to him and I said, "Jerry, why are you interviewing? Like, I'm right here. I want the job. Like, I don't know why you're interviewing everything other than because, I think you have to, right? Legally." And he
Mm.
goes, "You want the job?" This was literally my interview, Joe. He goes, "You want the job as my assistant?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Done." That was it. Like, so I left. So I stopped being a per diem and I became an actual assistant. And so then I was there for 2 years. And it's funny because the day before I started, he called me and he said, "Do you know the movie Swimming with Sharks?" And I said, "Yeah, the Kevin Spacey movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but
I
he goes,
haven't seen it, but I know it. Yep.
okay, so it's all about this guy in the entertainment business who is the biggest asshole boss ever. And he's just the nastiest, meanest, tormenting boss. And at the end of it, the assistant turns around and basically flips the script and like doesn't kill him, but essentially like, does like crazy shit to him. So he goes,
Mm.
"I want you to watch that movie before you start on Monday." So I watched the movie. I'm like, what the hell am I getting into? Oh my God, this is crazy. Like, is this like subliminally this guy's telling me like you're gonna get your ass handed to you every single day, which by the way, I did. But it was the best job because I ended up working for Tommy Mottola also. So Tommy was the head of Sony Music at the time. And I was basically so he had two assistants on his floor that, oversaw everything. And then he had an assistant on each, the Epic Records floor and the Columbia Records floor. And I ended up being that guy that whenever anybody in Tommy's office needed anything, they called me. Um, and so that kind of got me, that gave me a little bit more of a leg up. And basically, my boss got promoted. The senior vice president of the promotion he left, and my boss became senior vice president. He's like, I want you to come in and work for me, stay with me, but you're gonna have to give me another 2 years. And I was like, okay, you told me 6 months ago that if I was an assistant for more than 2 years, I sucked. Unless I wanted to be a career assistant, which of course I did not. And so I said, look, I love you, I appreciate it, but I'm gonna stay here. And I'm gonna, if you guys aren't ready to promote me, I'm gonna go find another job. And essentially, that's what I did. I ended up leaving. Sometimes you got to leave to move up, right? Um, so that's what I did. And I always wonder, you always wonder what if, right? If I didn't move here, if I didn't change this job, if I didn't meet my, the sliding door prophecy, right? Like,
Yeah,
what
right.
what happens if I missed that train that morning, or I didn't go to meet this guy, whatever. And so I always question, like, if I'd stayed there, because there's people that are still there today that I know that were there when I was there. And there's something to be said for either people who do a really good job are just like kind of quietly under the radar, or they're just, they're just lucky, and they've never been in that position to get shot in the head. But and I've been thankful because I've never really been in that position either. But although now as a manager, I'm always in that position. So which we'll get into, I'm sure. But yeah, that's how that was my entree into being a real assistant and kind of getting my real foot in the door, getting paid, benefits, bonus, and again, working for Sony Music, that was the biggest thing, and that was it. Like, it was awesome.
Yeah, no kidding. And look, one of the things I try to do during the conversations is just point out commonalities we see through our guests. And one of the commonalities we see from people that build successful lives is they take action. And
Yeah.
you've heard David talk about over and over and over again taking action.
Yeah.
So didn't know where it was headed, didn't have a master plan, didn't say, hey, this is exactly where I've got to go. But there was no moss growing underneath him, right? Because he was taking action. And cannot stress enough how important that is. If you want to build a life that you're proud of, that you're getting after things, that you're pursuing things that are important to you, you've got to do it. You
Yeah.
can talk about it and you can plan and you can research and all the other bullshit things people say when they're too scared to actually do things. And I'm not saying don't be prepared. I'm not saying don't get educated. I'm not saying any of those things. But if you listen to David's story, he was learning all this shit because he took action and he kept stepping up when opportunities presented themselves. And when they didn't, he went out and found other opportunities. Right. So, like, it's
And
one of the things I try to point out.
yeah, and look, the reality is, and I say this as a manager all the time when I talk to my artists and tell them things that, what I know and what we should do and what we shouldn't do and how, and it's really like, look, if I didn't do that, someone else is gonna. And so why should I let someone else do it when it's something that I want? Do I always get the answer I want? No, of course not. But, if I don't speak up, and you in general, meaning people who are paying attention or whoever we're talking to,
Yeah.
uh,
The collective. Yep.
yeah, like if you don't open your mouth, the answer is always no, right?
And
So,
someone else is going to open their mouth, by the way.
right, right. That's exactly. So I kind of, I know. I know when to do it, when not to do it now, and I know what to say and what not to say, but it's a long line of experience and failures and successes, which give you the ability to know that. So yeah,
Yeah, and you can't be afraid of the failures. I love the word experience, and the way I define experience for people is experience is something you get right after you need it.
yeah,
And it sucks because like you got to be willing to take some punches and get kicked in the teeth every once in a while if you want to be successful because it
yeah,
doesn't follow a linear path and it doesn't always go your way. And
right,
look, pivoting back to sports just for a second, that's one of the things sports teaches you. Some of the best experiences I had were watching another team hold up a championship trophy. That's very motivating to watch somebody else hold up the trophy you were trying to win. It's like, fuck this. I'm not going to be in this position again. I'm going to do what I got to do to be on the other side of this. I'm going to
Well,
figure it out.
and you see that all the time when when you watch the World Series or the NBA championships or the NHL, all the sports. You know, these players that lose, it's very rare that you see them not standing there watching the other
Mm,
team celebrate, right? Because it eats away at them, but it gives them motivation and it drives them to come back harder next year. And whether they do or they don't, they get traded, they retire, that's irrelevant. It's really the exact same thing as like, failure happens good things happen at a failure. It's just a question of whether or not you choose to accept it. And some people don't. Some people get punched in the face and they're like, man, okay, I just got punched. And the other person's like, no, no, I'm gonna punch you back. you know, and 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 so it's very similar because I've learned that also from you, and um, even like I took it personally when like my artists are nominated for Grammy Awards and they lose,
mm.
and I like that's just a part of who I was. And I was very lucky to be part of Taylor winning five, Amy Winehouse winning five, too, in those years. And those are incredible times. But then when you've worked your ass off to develop, market, brand, promote an artist, and they're nominated, right? Which is, oh, it's always great to be nominated. And then they lose, you're pissed, you know? But it's the same thing, I guess.
Yeah, hey, look, if you're keeping score, I want to win. It's really that basic. Like the
Yeah.
people that, oh, I'm just, the experience. Okay, cool. Like I get it. There's some good to that, but fuck it. Why are we keeping score if it doesn't matter? Like, what's
Yeah.
the point?
That's
You know?
exactly right. Exactly right. I'm not a big fan of the participation trophies also either.
Fuck
You know,
that.
like I always said to my kids when they were growing up, like if they came in second place, you know what? You shake their hands, you applaud them. I'm not putting a second place runner-up trophy. Um, Nelly had a song once called Number One, and the line of it is, you know, um, two is not a winner and three nobody remembers, right? That's what does it take to be number one? Two is not a winner, and three nobody remembers. And I always remember that song because it was also the NBC basket, the NBA on NBC, dun, 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 dun,
Yep.
dun, dun, which now they're bringing back. So I'm seeing all these promos on television with all these different celebrities and everything with that song. But that was the song that he had, and that was the line. I always remember that because it's Nelly was like an athlete. He was almost played baseball um, and I spent a lot of time with him over the years, and he's a competitor. And by the way, surrounding yourself with competitors makes you better. Also, you
Hmm.
never want to be hanging out with losers. Sorry,
Yeah,
I don't
that's
mean
right.
that. I'm just saying the truth.
Oh, it's just the
Yeah,
truth. Like sorry, I shouldn't even say sorry because I'm not sorry. Like I'm not sorry about that statement. Like there's people that want to grind and achieve, and there's people that don't. And I'm not judging the people that don't. I just don't want to spend a lot of time with them. Like that's just not my group. My group
I
is
gotta tell you,
people
Joe,
that want to get
you're
after it.
motivating me. You're motivating me even more today, just on this conversation. I'm sitting here at I have the ability to like not multitask, tri-task. Like I can do like 10 things at once most of the time. And in my head, when I'm listening to you, I'm answering the questions, but I'm also like, what did I not do today? What did I need to do better tomorrow? Like, what can I do? I just started manifesting things. Like every day I write down certain things, like
Yep.
five things that I want to do, whether it's, make someone smile, make money, forgive somebody, any of these kind of things that I've been being taught lately. And you repeat them and then you try and live by them. And some you do and some you don't. But this is motivating me, which is I love this. This is a great this is a good conversation.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. So you build this whole experience. You've got all these things. What made you decide to go out on your own? What made you go hang up your own shingle and start your consulting business?
So if you back up my career at Universal / Republic Records, right? I was the seventh employee there. I spent 21 years there, built the careers or was a part of building the careers of, everyone from Taylor Swift to Ariana Grande, Shawn Mendes, The Weeknd, Amy Winehouse, Jessie J, you name it. Like my DNA was on a lot of that. Um, And it was awesome. It was a great time to be at the company. Monty and Avery Littman are the best bosses I've ever had in my life. Very, very supportive, very competitive. Same going back to sports. Every
Yep.
analogy Monty ever brings up is a sports analogy, which I love. But so I got to a space. I was senior vice president, promotion and artist development, and I'd been there 21 years, and I was just like, okay, where can I go from here? Right? What can I do? Um, there was a chairman, a vice chairman, a president, a general manager, and then basically me, where reporting in, right? And now I could have made more money and stayed there, and argue that every single day in my mind. Why did I do? I did it. But I loved, like I said in the beginning of the call, I loved being with artists. I loved the excitement of taking an artist and making them big, famous, successful. I love being behind the scenes as much as I love being in front of the scene, and really trying to be the one who kind of educated, entertained, informed, and taught, right? And so I went to Monty, my boss, and I said, look, I've one year left on my deal. What are my options? And he goes, listen, he goes, you can stay here. I don't know what's going to happen in a year when your contract is up. Um, or you could leave and go do whatever you want to do, and I'll take care of you for, I'll pay you out of your last year. You bet benefits, bonus, salary for the next year, and you can go do whatever you want. And I was like, wait, so if I leave today, you're going to pay me everything, and I can go get a job tomorrow. And he's like, bro, your family, I never forget this. He said, you are family. You're part of the core of his company. Yes. I was like, okay. So I went home and thought about it. And again, maybe I just got caught up in the money component of it. Like, okay, wait, I'm going to be making this amount of money for the next year. I don't have to worry about benefits. I don't worry about a bonus. I'm going to get a bonus. And I can go build a company. And again, I was a little naive in that because, and I was still saying, and again, going back to like learning, like I failed, big time because I was in the Taylor Swift camp. I was in the Weekend camp. I was in Elton John's camp. I was, and I saw all this money and success and power from the manager's perspective. And I'm like, oh shit, that's easy, man. I can do that. Look at my relationships. Look at where I come from. And I went and uh I fell flat on my face right out of the gate. Like
Mm.
didn't know, even though I thought I did, I didn't really know like the management thing. Like I always dealt with the managers, the agents, all this stuff, but to actually turn around and be the manager, for a developing act that is making $37 in the year, even if you're making 20% of that, you're making $6. Like, or
Right.
$77.40. Like, and and that money runs out really quickly, the money that you have in the bank, trust me.
Yep.
And but you know what, I did it, and that's where I still am there today, and arguably now trying to get back in and do something, actually get a real job again, maybe. So I've been doing that, kind of trying to figure it out. But I have an artist that, two artists that are really taking off. Um, one in the country space and one in the rock space, and I can see some light at the end of the tunnel. But again, I miss that part of it. But I do look back at it, and I look at when I left, the guy who replaced me, is still there today. And I won't say any names, but he is, he's crushing it financially. And
Mm.
he's the number one promotion guy. And so I kick myself in the ass every day, like thinking of what, my wife yells at me, my kids, like, why'd you leave? Why would you ever give that up? And I wanted to do different. I wanted to do something different. I can't explain it. It's just, I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what the cards held. And so I made a calculated decision. And, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But I don't think I
Well,
lost. I just think that, I'm not where I was, put it that way.
yeah, that's all I was going to say is the game ain't over yet, right? So, I mean,
Correct.
yeah, the only
Correct.
time the score matters is when the final horn goes off. You don't get any
Right.
fucking points for winning the second quarter in
That's
basketball.
right.
It counts
That's
for
right.
nothing.
Right. So, um,
Yeah. So talk a
sorry,
little bit about
my
as you're
daughter's
going through
saying
this.
right now. Sorry.
Let's say it again.
I said my daughter just texted me, asking me if I'm going to pick her up from the train. She's working in the city these days. Like, yeah, I'll
Got it.
get you, but not at 5. So anyway, go ahead.
Hunker down. So talk a little bit about as you're going through this whole process, how did you build your family? Like, how did that all transpire during your professional career?
So I got married. I started at Republic in 96. I got married in 98, had my son in 2000, had my daughter in 2003. And then kind of went through, like, I mean, I was in the entertainment business. It was like, it was very difficult. The hours you're in late, out late. I was out until, depending on where I was or what I was doing, entertaining or traveling, either not coming home because I was on the road or coming home late or doing again dinner or whatever. And then sleeping in the morning and, because I could sleep early, I didn't have to be in the office till 10, right? So it
Yeah.
was like, this is way before COVID, so you'd had to come in, but it was different. And that definitely took a toll on my relationship with my ex-wife now, but at the time. Um, and we ended up getting, I think we ended up getting divorced when my daughter was 13 and my son was 16. So, which was tough. And, because that was tough ages for them.
Mm,
And, but I will tell you, I mean, I was an incredible dad. I always will be an incredible dad. I put my kids as much as I can first, but I learned valuable lessons, in that respect. And, um, when my son ended up going to college, and then, we can get into all that in a minute. But it was very difficult, but I got divorced and now I'm remarried, and which is an interesting story in itself. But I'm happy in that respect. I think I'm in a better place, from a true love perspective, um, and that. But yeah, it definitely played a toll on it played a very big part in my career, being married and then getting divorced and being a part of it. And I think it's certain things. Again, you talk about athletes traveling all the time. Like I was essentially an athlete. I was
yep.
out and doing stuff, and I was not in the 9 to 5 job, home every day, eating dinner at 6 o'clock, on the dot, and getting up every morning with the kids and doing. It just wasn't not how I did it. But when I was home, I was. But you know, and it took a real toll on me. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. What was your son like?
So Jack, he was 6'3". He was extremely good looking. He was in a couple of commercials, and he was a Pampers baby when he was born. Um, but he was a great athlete, but he was a better person. And he believed, no matter what age he was growing up, he just believed that people are people, race, religion, color didn't exist to him. Um, and he wanted to be friends with everybody. And, as he got older, um, he was a peacekeeper. He was somebody that, I met people after he passed that would say, we went to, I was at a party. I met your son once, and never knew him. I was sitting in, like I said about coming into a party, Jack would find the kid sitting in the corner and go talk to him, and find out what he was doing, why he was sitting in the corner. Did he know anybody at the party? Um, he was just that kind of person. He just believed in helping everybody. And ironically, my daughter is the same way, and she's a teacher now in New York City, which I thought she was gonna, she graduated from Indiana. She wanted to be in the music industry, and then she got a job as a teacher, um, and said, you know what, look, I'm gonna take this job. And she's teaching at a charter school. And today, ironically, was the first day. Well, you're gonna look back on this, but she is teaching first graders and loving it, and is excited about it. The hours suck, but she's happy. And she's doing great things. And so they were great kids. My daughter still is. My stepson is amazing. And I'm happy to be, where I am today. And I mean, listen, it's a bitter pill to swallow because I lost my 20-year-old son, or my 19-year-old son. but his memory, his legacy, his vision of what he wanted to do in life, I carry with me every day. So
Yeah, that's I doing my preparation for our conversation, I read up on stuff, and you talked a little bit about some struggles with mental illness, and that he had started his own company, and was hoping you could talk just a little bit about those experiences that you had with him.
yeah, he was a serial entrepreneur, right from 5 years old when he was selling rocks to construction workers in our neighborhood. Um, he he was he was a street smart hustler. Like he did, he just knew how to navigate every situation, very similar to the way I am. Um, you could drop him off, he knew where he was. You could put him in a room with 20 different strangers and he would come out with 12 best friends. Like he thrived on learning about people and being that he was not, he was a good student, but he was not a book smart kid. Like he hated school, right up until the point where he went to the University of Denver, um, and was a rising, what is it? I think, or he was a rising junior. He was going to be a junior. Is that how you, right? Yeah, he
Sure.
was a
Okay.
rising junior. And, um, he played sports all the way up through high school. And then, he went to school. He was a huge snowboarder, love snowboarding. And, let's be honest. I mean, it's legal in three-quarters of the country today. So he smoked a lot of weed, and he was, he just, he didn't drink a lot. He just smoked a lot of weed, and, but he was like a functioning, he could get high and be like able to do anything, and
Hmm.
not condoning that. I'm just saying, that's the way he was. And so he became a painter and an artist, and, he kind of left the sports stuff and joined a fraternity and hung out and made great friends and loved every minute of it. And then, um, so in 2020, he was in school and started making t-shirts, and out of his dorm room in a heat press, drawing the designs, putting them on, figuring out how to transfer them, and he was selling out of every shirt, every hoodie that he created. And he would do anything. He'd take a pair of sweatpants, he'd come home, he'd go to Target, he'd buy, $200 worth of crap, and then he'd bring it back to school, and he'd do stuff to every one of them, and he'd sell it. And everybody in his fraternity was like, you should make a business out of this. And then COVID hit, and he came home. He locked himself in my ex-wife's basement for about a month or two, and he came up one day and he's like, I got it. He's like, I know what I want to do. And this was like, he was constantly doing these raffles on Facebook, and, doing things, and like selling sneakers and selling cards. And he was doing all these different things, and he was making money. So he says to me in March, he goes, when I go back to school, he goes, if I'm making more money than it costs to go to school, can I quit? And my whole philosophy was with my kids growing up was, once you start something, you don't quit. Like,
Sure.
I don't care if you're the last kid on the bench, or you're the last one picked, whatever it is, or you start a job, like, you got to see through it. I don't care. So I always had that, Nathan's don't quit mentality. And so I kind of was like, this was different, right? Because all of a sudden he would be making, I think it was 70 grand a year to go to Denver. So that's not bad for a 19-year-old or 20-year-old to be making
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
money. So, and I knew he was the same as me, he was never going to be a doctor or a lawyer. He was going to be, an entrepreneur. He was going to own something, start a business, run a business, do something. So he came home in COVID. He found the company, he named it Happy Jack, because obviously his name was Jack. When he was a kid, everybody always used to call him Happy Jack. So that was an easy name. Came up with the logo, this, which is kind of the crooked smile and the Happy
Hmm.
Jack logo. And in June of 2020, he launched the company. And there's videos out there, like, you can find it. And he launched 2020, or midnight on I think June 3rd. He launched his first collection, sold out in 20 minutes. Donated his first $1,000 that he made to Child Mind Institute. which focuses on kids. Child Mind Institute's a nationwide organization that focuses on kids who suffer from any type of mental health issue. It's the preteen, younger ages. And he ended up giving the first $1,000 to them, and he was off to the races. And um, Father's Day came, and we were in Connecticut at my parents' house, and we were walking on the beach. And he said, "Child Mind came to me, and they want to do an exclusive with me." And I said, "That's amazing." And he said, "Yeah, but I don't want to do it." And I said, "Well, why?" And he said, "Because I want to help everybody. I don't. I want to make money and give it away." That was his line to me.
Mm,
And I said, "Okay, so what's the problem?" And he said, "No, it's not a problem. I just wanted you to know how I feel and where I am." I said, "Jack, that's amazing." Like, this was the conversation. It was Father's Day weekend, 2020, and came back home, was running the company, doing his stuff, and then my birthday, I was 50 on the 28th of June, and we had a surprise birthday party my wife threw for me, and that was the last time I saw him. And he brought me into the party. I have a great video of him like walking me into the backyard. And then July 3rd, or July 2nd, he went to a party down in Marlborough, New Jersey, which is about an hour from here, 45 minutes down south in New Jersey. And uh, late at night, he talked to my ex-wife at like 12:30, and he was like, "Look, I'm just going to stay down here," because he didn't want to drive back. He was kind of messed up. And he later on that night, he took what he thought was a Percocet to go to bed, and it was laced with fentanyl. And he went to sleep and never woke up. So,
oh,
so I lost. So he was 19. So I lost my son at 19 years old, and needless to say, it is literally physically, emotionally, um, the worst thing that can ever happen to a human being. I don't care. There's no argument. You can't. And I'm going to get vulgar for a second, but like, if somebody gets raped by 10 guys, you're still alive.
right.
You're still here. Yes, it's the worst thing ever. Like, the mental capacity of that is horrible. You can get shot. You can get, anything that can happen. But to lose a life of your child is, that's the worst thing that can ever happen to a human being. And so my ex-wife and I, needless to say, we took over the company together, and we have built it into, it's called Happy Jack, and we built it into an incredible company. It's not about making money, although that's always a good piece because we give back. But we've donated over $350,000 to different charities, foundations, organizations. We have partnered with Kenneth Cole, with Adidas, with the NFL, with NAMI, with all different, with Lady Gaga and with Selena Gomez and with Demi Lovato and all different foundations and charities. And again, the idea is, while we stay in this mental health space, the idea is to do exactly what Jack wanted to do, which is make money and give it away, and not just to this. Even though this is our basis, we do kids with cancer. We did Black Lives Matter in the beginning. We did we supported stuff in the Me Too movement. We supported women's breast cancer, the Comfort Project 360, which is here. So we've done a lot of different things. And we have scholarship. We have a scholarship at the University of Denver. It's the Jack Nathan Arts Scholarship, which gives $5,000 every year for 5 years to a kid that goes to school at Denver, that wants to do something in the arts. We just financed a movie at the University of Miami for, I think, $5,000. We're a part of it, which is a mental health piece that's going into that school, communications. And so we're doing some really good things. I want to do more. We launched the foundation, which we've given a lot of money away. So I literally today just sent out an email to about 500 people, because actually more, because we're low in funds, and I got to get that money back so I can keep doing what I want to do. But there's not a day that goes by that I'm not sad and angry and frustrated. I know exactly who gave Jack the drugs. I know when it happened. I know where it happened. I know all of it, and it's frustrating because I can't really do anything about it. Um, all I can do is educate and inform. And we do a lot. For the first year, we didn't really talk about fentanyl. We talked about, the mental health component of it and what Jack really believed in. And then one day we were on Good Day New York in New York City, and my ex-wife, they asked us a question, like, how did it happen? And she didn't even tell me she was going to do this. And she just literally was like, she just said, how Jack died, and that was that. The door opened, and we just started talking about that from now on, and a little bit more of fentanyl awareness, and a little bit more of, mental health stigmas, and how to get around that, and what to do on a bigger, platform, as opposed to just talking about mental health or just talking about fentanyl. So yeah, so that's where we are, and it's again, every day I learn, every day I'm sad, every day I'm happy, every day I'm mad, every day, you go through the gamut of emotions. And again, with those manifestations, it's just like, what can I do good today? And how would it, and, my wife asks me all the time, like, what would Jack have done, in this situation? How would he have thought about this? And it's hard because there are some things that we don't want to partner with, some companies, that we've had opportunities to do. And my ex-wife has kind of been real candid about, like, well, Jack never would have been a part, never would have done that. He's
Mm.
not, he would have done something with, Converse or Vans, but he wouldn't have done anything with Skechers, because Skechers was not a cool brand. So it's like, how do you determine today who you would or who you wouldn't? Because we don't know. I don't even know if Jack would have his company still. Who knows? But um, I know what it is, and I believe in it, and I believe that if we continue to grow it, it could really become something big.
Yeah,
That's
what a great way to honor his memory. And it's so cool that you're doing that. We had a guy on, his name's Stephen Panis, and we aired his episode a couple months ago, and his son was killed in a drunk driving accident, and he was 16 at the time that he passed away. And like he talked about, like a lot of people avoid it because it makes them uncomfortable and they don't know what to say. And like he said, there's nothing to say. Like you can't say anything because whatever the words don't mean anything. You can't change what happened. And like you had talked about, I just can't think of anything worse than losing a child. Like there's nothing worse that could happen to a person than losing a child. I'm just curious, how do you kind of reconcile that or deal with those emotions when they pop up? Because they don't ever go away. But how do you learn to live with that?
I'll throw a real wrench in this. Is that my wife, my new wife, um, she I didn't know her then, but she lost her daughter when she was 5 years old.
Mm,
So and she has I have a stepson, but it's just very bizarre that she lost her daughter. I never knew it, but I knew from town, but I didn't know who it was. Um, but it was a very big thing because when a 5-year-old in town dies,
sure.
people know. And um, so we met, I courted her, we got engaged, we got married. We got married in April of 2020, and Jack died in July.
Yep.
So my wife has suffered the loss of her daughter, the loss of her stepson. My stepson has experienced the same, and my daughter has experienced the loss of a brother.
Mm,
And you know, you I thank God. When I do a lot of speaking, and I speak and I teach at the University of Miami, or I used to. I do a lot of talking about a lot of different things, the music industry and mental health and all this stuff. And one of the things that I always say is, when you lose a child, you're not on that straight road anymore. You've hit the wall, so now you're going left or right, right? And I use this analogy, and I some people are like, why do you have to be so harsh? Why can't you just be like, oh, maybe you end your life? Like, I say, left is a gun in your mouth, and right is, you figure out how to deal with it on that. And I get harsh because that's the truth,
yep.
and I thank God every day that my wife went right, and she went the right way. And it's not something you want to be able to teach and educate and, like,
Mm,
okay, here's
right.
how it happens, and this is what, because everybody's different. And the things that she felt and experienced as a mother are completely different than I felt as a father. Um, and but thank God I have that. And I have an incredibly strong, amazing relationship with Allie's ex-husband. And I think the reason for there's a bunch of reasons, but I think one of the main reasons is because we both lost children and we're
Mm,
fathers. We were both divorced and we've been through these things together. And I call him all the time and he understands. He's like, David, I get it. Like I spent, I had nothing to do. I poured my soul and heart into work. Um, and I'm in a different situation because I had a stepson, I had a wife, and I had a daughter, and I had things, I had to provide and do everything. And then ironically, 2 years ago, we're sitting in the kitchen at my house and the phone rings. Um, and it's my best friend from growing up. It's his sister from Hawaii. I'm like, why the hell is she calling me? I didn't answer the phone. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Maybe they're like just die. And then I was sitting here and I'm like, that's really something's not, I have like a weird feeling. I literally got like some feeling. And I
mm,
called her. She's like, his name is Darren. And she's like, Darren's 13-year-old son was killed in a car. He was on his bike in Florida and he got killed by a driver. So after the initial shock, I looked at my wife and I said, I got to go to Florida right now.
mm,
And I literally, and she did too, because we know them. And we were on a plane the next morning and we just showed up at their house. And, so this is kind of a long answer to your question, but you never get over it, ever. Um, your feelings never change, but life moves on and things happen. And, I was lucky that I had Allie to help me through it. And I had to be there for my friend Darren. And that's the circle of life kind of thing. And a friend of mine in the music industry, his son, 21 years old, just died from fentanyl. And I haven't spoken to him. I called him, I left him a message, and I get it. Like he may never want to talk to me ever. But,
sure.
all I just said to him was, hey, Brian, it's David Nathan. I just want to let you know not that many people can call you and tell you how this goes. And I said, I completely understand where you are. I know exactly, not even just because your son died, but how he died, because it was the exact same way.
Right.
And I said, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I don't care what time it is. My phone's always on. Like, call me and I will speak to you. And look, I haven't heard from him yet, and I'm sure I will at some point, or I'll run into him somewhere down in Nashville. But that's how you got to do it. And I didn't want to be in this grief group. I didn't want to. I don't need that. The way I deal with it is being out and talking to people and being with my friends and trying to smile. But for a while, I didn't. It took a long time. And my personality is loud, smile, carefree, outgoing. Personality. So it was really difficult. But and I still go through it. Like there'll be a night, my wife will say, we're going out for dinner. I'm like, I really don't want to go. I just don't. I love our friends. I don't want to be in a place tonight. I need to just be home and watch a TV or, smoke a joint or whatever and just like do nothing. And, but it is always an education process. And I have learned a tremendous amount from Jack. And looking back at it, I learned so much from him, even the 19 years he was on this earth. And and I learned from my daughter, and I just have to be there for her. And she suffered an incredible loss also. I mean, she lost her brother, her best friend, so um so that's why the foundation's important. That's why we're doing what we're doing. Um, and again, like I tried to start, which I'm gonna revisit at some point, Happy Jack Records, which would be the first ever mental health record company focused on the mental well-being of the artists and putting them in the forefront, because no one really no one really ever gives a shit about the artist, and I
Mm,
and I was in it firsthand, I mean, and I always look back and I'm like, I was one of Amy Winehouse's confidants at the company. I was only one of the only label people she talked to. And I always think like, could I have helped her? Could I have helped? Different situation because she was so strung out and she was in a bad place. But the history of the music industry, and the artists that have disappeared from this industry, right? Whether it's Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, all the way to Mac Miller and and Amy Winehouse, like, these artists and the things that, could you have helped? Could somebody have jumped in? And even today with Selena and Demi and Chappell Roan and Justin Bieber and and Louis Capaldi, who is like all these artists who still have, that's never going away, right?
Right.
It's never going away. So, can you help? Can you, and I love seeing when like Louis Capaldi donates 172,000 hours of therapy to people. Like that's what you should be doing. That's what these artists are supposed to do. They're role models. They have to step up and Taylor Swift is a perfect example because like to me, Taylor's a mover, right? Meaning if Taylor tells her fan base to do something, even if 1% does it, that's still over 1 million people doing something,
Wow.
and it makes a big difference. And I think it frustrates me today to see that the artists that are kind of just jumping on the bandwagon and talk about mental health because I think it's great, and like one of my favorite songs is Anxiety by Doechii because it's like this incredible song and talks about like what anxiety is, and I love that. And people should be talking about it. It's there is unfortunately still a stigma attached to it. It's gotten a lot better. Don't get me wrong, but there's still a long ways to go. A long ways to go.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm glad that you're seeing it in the sports world as well now. There's like an increased awareness, and I think Kevin Love was one of the first kind of superstar athletes to come out and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
I struggle with this stuff sometimes. Maybe I shouldn't because I'm rich and famous and blah 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 blah. But I'm a person, and like it's not easy sometimes." On that note, if someone does feel like they're struggling with mental health, what's a good step for them to take to go find help? Where do they do that at? What's the best?
Well, you can
Best
always
isn't
go
a
to you can always go to our website, happyjacksworld.com. That is, we offer a variety of resources, depending on what it is. It's for a while we didn't really talk about suicide because, when you hear about fentanyl or drugs, the immediate assumption is, oh, somebody killed themselves, right? And that's not what Jack did. Jack was at a party, took something that he thought was something else, and it was laced with fentanyl. I mean, you're unfortunately hearing about this every single day.
mm,
This is happening. But the first piece of advice is to open your mouth. Is do not be afraid to have a conversation. I don't care if it's with your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your significant other or your mother or your father or your brother, your sister, your best friend. These are people in your inner circle that believe in you, care for you, love you. I don't care who you are, you have somebody. You have to. And if you don't, then pick up the phone and call somebody. But I think the first thing you need to do is be able to open your mouth and have a conversation. Because if you can't do that, you're doomed because it's just going to all kind of fester inside you and then you're done. And I don't ever want anybody to be done. So,
yeah, yeah. I think that's 100% right. Like a lot of us feel like everyone's got to shoulder the load on their own, and like everybody does it different. And like I've never been a big group of friends kind of guy. Like I fit, like we talked about earlier. I was
yeah,
accepted by all sorts of groups. So I was smart in school, and so I was accepted by all the people that took AP classes because I had classes with them. I was a good athlete, so I was accepted by the athletes. I was
right.
student body president, so I was accepted by the people that were really into civics and community and those kind of things. But I was never a part of any of those groups. Like I didn't, that wasn't my clique. I was very eclectic and I knew a lot of people, had a ton of acquaintances, but family has always been the center for me. And I knew even as a kid that, so like we talked about before we came on here, we're shooting this on my 32nd anniversary with my wife. And even as a kid, I knew I wanted to be married to someone that like I liked being around and I had a good relationship with. Like as an 8-year old, I remember thinking that like it was important to me.
Amazing.
And so that's what I build my life around. Without that, I don't know what I how I would be or what would happen with me.
Yeah.
But I know that's what's important to me. And that's what I
Yeah.
encourage people to do is what's important to you? Like what is it that matters to you, and seek that out. Build your life around that because it's the best shot you've got at building a life that you're really happy with and that has purpose for you.
And you know what I'll say to you? Listen, there's not a day that goes by that at some point, it may be a fleeting, it may just in and out of my head where I feel sorry for myself.
Mm,
And I feel bad. Some days it goes a lot longer, but I always know perfect example, like my mom lives in Connecticut. My dad passed away this past year. And my mom has never been by herself ever. Like, I think she said to me last night when I was talking to her, in her entire life, she spent 17 days on her own.
mm,
Like, and now she's by herself.
yep.
And she's doing a lot of things now. She's traveling. She's doing things. My dad was sick, and she couldn't really do them. But she knew. I saw her last night. She knew there was like I'm not in a great place right now, and she's going away with my sister, who lives about 15, 20 minutes from me. She's going away with my sister for the weekend, and she called me this morning, and she's like, "I'm coming over." And she came here and we sat in my living room and just talked for about an hour. And that was because and I didn't want to talk. Like I was in one of those I just mentioned, one of those moods.
Mm,
And I'm just like, I gotta get myself out of this. I gotta get myself out of it. But my mom saw it, and she came over and sat with me, and we just talked. Like, and I felt better after. Did it fix the problem? No. But
right.
it gave me, like you just said about family, it gave me the ability to know that I have a brother, I have a sister, I have a mother, and I have a daughter and a stepson and a wife that all care about me. And then the outers and like I got to keep going. I got to keep doing it for a lot of people. It's funny you mentioned Kevin Love because um last year I was in Miami and I literally ran into him.
Mm,
Like, and I was trying to get in touch with him because we wanted to do something. And I dropped a couple names of people that he knew. And so he knew I was like not some crazy fit. Like, I was a
yeah, right.
legit, you know. So we started talking. He gave me his address. I sent him a bunch of Happy Jack stuff. And of course, which is frustrating, is he never responded after that. And it is what it is. But um, he's too busy. He's busy. I wish that wasn't the case, but it is. But just talking about the sports thing for a second is I don't know if you follow the Red Sox or you follow baseball, obviously, but Jaron Duran, who plays for the Red Sox, had he's had a lot of problems with mental health issues in the last couple of years, and he came out this year and talked about it. And the Red Sox did a special, and it was all over it. And then he got the shit kicked out of him in a couple of ballparks, like just fans, they were tormenting him, and
Yeah.
it really became a big problem. And Major League Baseball got involved, and and the other teams, because it was at visiting ballparks, and I think the other teams got involved and said, and came out and apologized and embraced it and did all these things, and it was something that was so ugly, right? I hope became pretty and a beautiful thing to talk about, and if something good comes out of something nasty, I don't say it's worth it because no one's that should never happen, but
Right.
it does, and that's unfortunately. I mean, look where we live and what we're doing in our lives, like what's going on all over the world right now, right? So it is what it is, but it's the people that realize it, and I give Jaron a lot of credit. Like I actually, DM'd him. I haven't gotten a response yet because he's got 200,000 followers and probably doesn't want to respond. But I would love to like have a conversation with him and explain to him, about Jack and where I am and how I appreciate what he's gone through. And I'm a diehard Red Sox fan, so it makes it even better. But it's just, again, this goes all the way back to what would you do? Use your voice, open your mouth and speak, because if you can do that, then the door's open, right? If the door is closed, nobody can get in. Okay. The door is
Yep.
open. Even a crack, someone can get in, and then the conversation can be had. And that's really ultimately what it all comes down to.
Yeah,
So,
and look, here's the other thing I'll say. Like, you're talking about the guy from the Red Sox and other fans just being pricks. Like, there's just no other way to say it. They're being pricks. With that said, are you a Ted Lasso fan? I fucking love the show
yeah.
Ted
Oh yeah,
Lasso.
love.
Like,
I love,
I
love, love
love
that.
it. Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. And so he has a line in there, and spoiler alert if you haven't watched it, I'm giving away a major plot line here. But when Nate leaves and everybody's angry at him, I shouldn't say everybody, but there's an opportunity for him to come back, and Beard doesn't want to let him back in. And Ted Lasso says something to Beard. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but it's mostly right. So, I hope either all of us or none of us are judged by the actions in our worst moment. I hope that everyone is judged by how they behave if and when they get a second chance. And you don't want to paint anyone, count anyone out that was a dick or a prick or a jerk or whatever invective you want to insert here to you, because you don't know where they're at in life and you don't know where they're going, or what they're going through at that particular moment. So, if someone encountered you 3 weeks after Jack's passing, they would have experienced a very different you than they do today. And like you've talked about, like even though today, you may not be at your best, it may not be all fucking rainbows and unicorns, and it may not be in the best spot ever, but you're in a better spot than you were. And maybe you reach out to someone who's not at a point where they can provide the help or support that you're looking for. Keep looking. Somebody else will. Somebody else has it in them to be that person for you right now. And don't cast negative aspersions at someone simply because I get it, it sucks. And some people are just pricks. Like they're some people are just pricks by nature, but they're few and far between, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. And look, like I said, I look at life differently for a variety of different reasons. Whether it's, even just recapping this, going back to my career and did I make a decision that, was the wrong decision? I got to live with that. I can't, you can't go backwards in life. That's for sure. You know? Um, and so the only opportunity is to move forward. And, how do you do that? What do you do? How do you train yourself? How do you think? How do you manipulate situations to get better? How do you, or your brain to get better? And
Mm.
I'm trying to think, like, my mom said something to me today that was really impactful, but my brain is like all over the place right now. And I'll think about it later probably, but um, it has to do with like being done. And she said, well, if you haven't accomplished something to the effect of like, if you haven't accomplished what you want to do, then you're not done. Something like, I can't, I don't know. I have to remember it. I'll ask her. She'll tell me. But it hit me, and I was like, now I want to remember it because I want to write it down. Uh, so, but yeah, it's. Listen, I've been thrown a lot of, I've been hit with a lot of punches throughout my life and career, and uh, I'm still here. So, and I think that's that shows the type of person that I am, the competitive person that I am, the person that's understanding and I do everything for anybody. I would, anybody calls me, I'll try and do anything I can for you. And that's just the way I am. And I was brought up that way. And I've always been a giver, not a taker. And I'm in a situation right now in my life that I'm unfortunately taking. And I hate it. I hate it
Mm.
because I don't want to be that person because I always want to give. And and it's my wife's ex-husband is a giver. And and I see what he's doing now. And even just, on a weekend when he pays for everything out at his beach house and during the summer. And it's a lot of money. And you're like, let me give you something. He's like, no, I don't want. And I like that David Nathan much better than I like the taker. Um, I got to get back. I got to be back. I got to get back to being a giver. So so that's my goal. That's one of my goals.
Yeah, totally get it. Totally understand. I'm very similar. I'm the one almost always, and I say almost always because it's not always, but I'm almost always the one that's providing the support, providing the foundation, providing the security. Um, but nobody can do that all the time. Everyone needs help and support at some point in their life. And it can be really shocking too. So like, I had about 3 years ago, I had a heart surgery that unplanned. Like I just felt shitty one day and I went into the hospital, and then the next day I was on the table and they were doing their thing. And, it was the only time my wife has ever said, like I didn't know what to do because like you're the one that we all count on and lean on. And then all of a sudden it was like, fuck, what's going on here? Like this is so bizarro world, you know?
That literally just happened to a friend of ours, and he didn't feel well. I mean, he's not in the greatest shape, but he didn't feel well. He stayed at home. He went to the hospital. They said, I think it's just like blah 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 blah. He went home, went back to the hospital the next morning, open heart surgery, triple bypass. Like, and if he didn't go back to the hospital, he'd be dead. Like, and
Yeah,
so
right.
yeah, it's just. But by the way, and I don't know you, only from this conversation and the one we had prior, but I'm happy you're here, and I'm happy that that surgery went well, and you did that because you're doing great things, and you're making an impact on people's lives, whether you believe it or not, and just somebody who's turning it, you're gonna get from me. You're going to get hopefully, a bunch of new people once we start promoting this and get it out there that are going to become fans of yours now. And, I respect and appreciate, you interview me, you're talking to me. I mean, this was just a cold email I sent out to a bunch of different people saying, hey, I would love to have a conversation. And you responded. And I'm thankful for that, because to me, now I have a new friend, a new somebody. And one of my manifestations was, create a new relationship today was one of my things that I came up with today. And I just did. So like I achieved that goal.
Well,
So I'm happy.
thank you for the kind words. Really appreciate it. And like our whole point of the podcast is just to expose people to open your mind a little bit and build the life that you want. And one of the things I love that's always it's very humbling to me how candid people are willing to be on our podcast, because to your point, like, we had a brief conversation. We're very open about what we do on the podcast because we don't want anyone to be surprised. We don't want anyone to be uncomfortable. But people are so willing, and this is why it resonates with our audience, is because people are so willing to talk not only about the good things that have happened in their life, like people can listen to you talk about your career and working with like mega stars, people that everybody knows. And, I think a lot of people, I know this is true about sports. They picture this glamorous life. It's not so glamorous. Like everyone thinks it's glamorous. It ain't glamorous at all in most instances. There's a lot of things that suck about it. And then underneath all of that, right, you've got you wind up divorced, you're remarried, you lose your son, you make business decisions, and like the one you made may not be playing out the way right now, may not be playing out the way you thought it was going to play out. And I say right now because I would bet on you any day of the week with your
Thank you.
mentality and your approach and your grind. Don't don't count yourself out because it ain't over yet. You know what I'm saying? So you can still build it exactly the way you want. It might not happen at the pace you want it to, it might not happen at the trajectory that you want it to yet, but you can get there. Like you
Well,
can
you
get there.
you you just so you just inspired me to start something again, because I started Happy Jack Entertainment with somebody, and we started doing these video these, what do you call them? They're vodcast, what I don't, whatever. They're these, right? But they were in studio, so they're podcasts, but they're video. Um,
Sure.
and so we had two of them. One was called Misunderstood. Um, and I can't remember the other one, but the one I did was Misunderstood. And we did a lot of interviews. I mean, I interviewed the former Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. Jerome Adams. Like, we've had big artists on, and we stopped doing it. And I think I enjoyed this thoroughly, and like I think that maybe I can do something and get back into it and help as well. So you and I should talk separately, because maybe there's an opportunity to do something. I don't know. Maybe there's, but wait, I have to go because I got to go get my daughter.
Totally got it. No
Are we
problem.
are we good, or are we not? Like,
Nope, we're totally good. We don't. I'll do the intro, outro. But David, please, yeah, when it works, get back in touch with me. I'd love to talk about doing future stuff with you. I
100%.
love your approach, love your energy. Absolutely, I'm in. So let's talk.
And if you need any, I know that like from a video perspective, if you need any IDs or anything promoting Salty Ginger, just let me know. I'll create it. I'll tag you in. I may do a one of my posts today, and if I do it, I'll say, I just had a life-changing experience on Salty Ginger, which is coming out in October. So check out that podcast. Where can everybody find you?
Saltygingertalk.com. That's, yeah, we've got a website, and then that's pretty much our handle on Insta.
Saltygingertalk.com.
Yep.
Okay. And that's where they can find the podcast and the video, everything, right?
Yep. The whole shooting match. So yeah, David, thank you so much. Really, I fucking loved our conversation, man. I can't wait to reconnect with you when it works.
Yeah.
So I'll put you down for a follow-up if I haven't heard from you in a couple of weeks, and we can talk about other opportunities. But go get your daughter. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
Bye, Jeff.
thanks, David. All right, have a great week. All right.
You too.
Bye. Okay, guys, there you go. So, look, we're gonna pat ourselves on the back here for a minute because we just are always so impressed with our guests, and we keep finding awesome people to share their thoughts and experiences with you to help you build the life that you want. And just really appreciate David's energy and his candidness and his willingness to talk about things that are really difficult for people to deal with, and a lot of times really difficult for people to talk about. And we would just underscore, for our biggest takeaway from this, it's like he talked about, if you're struggling with something, open your mouth, talk to somebody about it, get it out in the open. You hear us say it a lot on the podcast. The best disinfectant for anything is sunlight. It's the best cure for anything, to get it out in the open and deal with it instead of trying to shoulder the load on your own. And just really appreciate David coming on. And all the contact information for David will be in the show notes if you want to work with Happy Jack or understand what they're doing or contribute or partner with them in any way, and you're interested to get in touch with David. We'll put that all down in the show notes so you can we won't have to go far to find them, and you can get in touch with them. So just thank you again, David, for coming on. Just what an outstanding guy, what an outstanding job he did, and really happy that he was able to share what he shared with us and take the time with us. So James puts it up over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of the podcast episodes are available there. All the social media accounts available there. We publish a newsletter every weekday. You can subscribe to there. And please like, share, comment, subscribe to our podcast, whatever platform you consume it on. Super helpful for us if you're able to do that. We're going to keep finding awesome people. The world's filled with awesome people doing awesome things. They're so willing. They want to help you. They want you to build a better life. They want to help you do that. You don't want to miss all of those great tips and experiences and conversations that we're so fortunate to have with all of our awesome guests. So make sure you catch our next episode. We will see you there.